Moving on, so far we have read the two superstitions which Gardiner has talked about. It's the superstition of avoiding number 13, whether it is a house to live in or a hospital bed, and the second one which he has talked about is not to go under a ladder but to go around it. And though he substantiates the second one again by saying that the reason why I don't go under a ladder then go around it is the concern for my safety, that anybody who is up the ladder can throw anything down, or he may throw himself down upon me while I move below it, or that's why I do that thing. Now, moving ahead, he says, all the same, I suspect that when I walk around the ladder, I am rather glad that I have such respectable and unassailable reasons for doing so. Even if conscious of this suspicion and ashamed to admit it to myself, I walk under the ladder, I am not quite sure that I have done so as a kind of negative concession to the superstition. I have challenged it rather than being unconscious of it. Now again he says that though I am much happy to admit this thing, that I have these very respectable and very reliable reasons, very unavoidable reasons for doing so. The reasons that something might fall upon me, even the man who is on the ladder might fall upon me. So he says, I have such unavoidable reasons to sustain my habit of going around the ladder than just a mere superstition. It says, even if conscious of this suspicion and ashamed to admit it to myself, I walk under the ladder, I am not quite sure that I have done so as a kind of negative concession to the superstition. He says, even if I have walked under the ladder, anyhow, even if I have walked under the ladder, then I am quite sure that I haven't done that thing as a negative concession to that superstition. Means even if I have walked under that ladder, then I haven't done that thing out of some negative concession to that superstition. Means I haven't done that thing just to allow doubtful suspicion to that superstition, that it is nothing but just a useless talk. I have challenged it rather than being unconscious of it. He says, even if I have done it, है ना, मतलब अगर मैं कभी सीढ़ी के नीचे से गया भी हूँ तो what I have done, I haven't done it out of doubt about that superstition and out of negation of that superstition. I have done so only to challenge that superstition. There is only one way of dodging the absurd dilemma, and that is to walk through the ladder. And he says, there is, in a very funny manner, he says that the only way in which I can deny this thing, that I don't have this thing in my mind, anything about this superstition, that you should not go beneath a ladder, is to go through it. देखो, there are दो possible ways. Either you go under the ladder or you go around the ladder. है ना भाई, आज के दिन मतलब अगर हम जनरली बात करें तो दो ही तरीके हैं, या तो आप सीढ़ी के नीचे से जाओगे या आप सीढ़ी के बाहर से घूम के जाओगे. Enough. He says, if I go under the ladder, then why I am going there this way? Because I am opposing that thing. I am just revolting against that idea, that superstition, that you shouldn't go under a ladder. And if I go round the ladder, it means obviously I am believing that superstition and I am following it. So he says the only way in which I can negate this dilemma, that whether I believe in that superstition or not, whether I have that kind of belief in such foolish talks or not, is to go through the ladder. मीन्स सीढ़ी के बीच से होकर निकलना ना, जो सीढ़ी के स्टेप्स होते हैं उनके बीच से होकर निकलना, दैट इज द ओनली वे. दिस इज नॉट इजी, बट ही सेज दिस इज नॉट इजी टू डू. अगर हम ऐसा कुछ करें तो ये उस सीढ़ी के नीचे जाने की बजाय और ज़्यादा रिस्की होगा, इसलिए दिस इज नॉट एन इजी टास्क टू डू. इन द सेम वे I am sensible of a certain satisfaction when I see the new moon in the open rather than my left. I would not for any consideration arrange these things consciously, but if they happen so, I fancy I am better pleased than if they do not. And on these occasions I have even caught my hand, which chanced to be in my pocket at the time, turning over money a little surreptitiously, I thought, but still undeniably turning it. Hands have habit of their own, and one can't always be watching them. Again he talks about one more superstition. And what is that? He says that I would be in the same way, I would be happy if the new moon happens to be in the open than in the left side of my view. Sometimes this is also a superstition, that the new moon on your left side is not good to see. So he says that in the same way I would feel happy, and there is a kind of satisfaction to me if I see the new moon in the open area than on my left side. I would not for any consideration arrange these things consciously, but if they happen so, I fancy I am better pleased than if they do not. He said I don't try to do these things consciously, that whenever I go out, first let me check whether the moon is on left or in the open area. So he says I don't try to do these things consciously, but if they happen in such a manner that whenever I come out or whenever I happen to see the moon, it should be in the open, not on my left side. He says, though I don't try to do anything like this, but if anything of this sort happens, then I would be very happy to notice it. And on these occasions I have even caught my hand, which chanced to be in my pocket at the time, turning over money a little surreptitiously, I thought, but still undeniably turning it. He says, and this is again a belief, a superstition, that if you see the new moon in the open night, and so you should churn the money, you should move the money here and there in your pocket. That is a belief है ना. अगर आप नए चांद को देखते हो ना, मतलब जो एक कम का जो चांद होता है ना, एक तरह से अपन जो कहें तो जिस दिन से मतलब वो शुक्ल पक्ष शुरू होता है, तो उस दिन का जो चांद है उसे अगर आप देखते हो तो आपकी जेब में अगर पैसे हैं तो आप उन्हें टर्न करिए. ऐसा एक ये अंधविश्वास है, एक सुपरस्टिशन है. सो ही सेज दैट इफ आई हैपन्स टू सी such things anyhow, then if I see the moon on my left side, if that happens, then my hand, look at the way in which he is just putting away the blame from himself. He says my hand, I have caught my hand churning money in my pocket. I don't do this thing, but who does? My hand. I have caught my hand doing, though in a very surreptitious manner, means in a very casual manner, not in a very effortful manner, but yes, still I found it doing this thing. And he says, but still he says, hands have habits of their own and one can't always be watching them. But he said that this is again not my fault, because the hands, they have their own habits and you cannot keep a watch on your hands every time. Sometimes they just do what they want to do. But these shadowy reminiscences of antique credulity which we discover in ourselves play no part in the lives of any of us. They belong to a creed outward. Superstition was disinherited when science revealed the laws of the universe and put man in his place. It was no discredit to the superstitious when all the functions of nature were unexplored and man seemed the plaything of beneficent or sinister forces that he could neither control nor understand, but which held him in the hollow of their hand. He related everything that happened in nature to his own inexplicable existence, saw his fate in the clouds, his happiness or misery announced in the flight of birds, and referred every phenomenon of life to the soothsayers and oracles. Now, he, though these are his excuses and about himself, that what he believes, what he not believes, or how people they act or behave with these superstitions. Now he comes to another justification of these superstitions, that what is happening today. He says, but these shadowy reminiscences means those rememberings, those remaining things, those memories, those recollections, they are of antique credulity. Credulity means, gullibility means falling prey to those ancient memories which we discover in ourselves play no part in the lives of any of us. He says, though these superstitions, we believe them, we follow them, we act according to them, but still they don't play any vital role in our lives. Why? Because they are just the tokens from the past to whom we are carrying forward, but not as importantly, not as vitally as they have been in the past. They belong to a creed outworn. These superstitions, they belong to whom? They belong to that creed which is no longer exist now. Superstition was disinherited when science revealed the law of the universe and put man in his place. He says these superstitions and all these blind beliefs, they were discarded, they were being stopped from usability when science discovered the universe, that how the earth is created, how we live, how we die. So then, and put man in his place means that place where man is now, the supreme animal of the earth. So when this thing has happened, that the science has discovered all the laws of universe and established man as the supreme animal of this earth, then these superstitions have lost their value and they have grown out of use. It was no discredit to be superstitious when all the functions of nature were unexplored. He says, I agree with this thing, or I don't want to be harsh to those forefathers of ours who have been superstitious, because it is quite normal thing to be superstitious when you don't know anything about the natural phenomena, when you don't know anything about the functions of nature, that how rain takes place, how thunderstorm takes place, how fire is lighted. So all these things. And man seemed the plaything of beneficent or sinister forces that he could neither control nor understand. So at that time he says either beneficiary forces means वो forces, वो ताकतें जो हमें बेनिफिट देती थी, जो हमें कोई फ़ायदा पहुंचाती थी, और द सिनिस्टर पावर्स मीन्स एविल पावर्स, जो बैड पावर्स थी, वो दे यूज टू कंट्रोल मैन. And about both these two things, either they were good or they were bad, man don't have any idea. He doesn't know anything about them, no, or no control over them. but which held him in the hollow of their hand. But it was quite obvious that man was being held in the hands of those evil or those good forces, but without any knowledge or without any control. He related everything that happened in nature to his own inexplicable existence, and said it is quite obvious that because of this uh, lack of knowledge and lack of control over the things which happened in nature, man related all these things to his own inexplicably unexplainable uh, ex- existence. So his fate in the clouds. Then what he used to do? He used to see or believe that what will happen to him by seeing the clouds. His happiness or misery announced in the flight of birds. He used to believe that if that bird is seen flying, then good will happen with me, or if I see that bird, then bad will happen with me. Means all those blind beliefs, all those superstitions were prevalent. Why? Because he don't have any knowledge or any control over those things which has been happening to him, and referred every phenomena of life to the soothsayers and oracles. And because of this thing, that he was so uncertain of everything, he was so unconscious of what is going to happen to him and why that thing is happening to him, he always used to refer to the soothsayers or the oracles, जो ये भविष्य वक्ता होते हैं और जो अपने होते हैं ना ज्योतिषी और वो सब भविष्य बताने वाले. So he says that at that time, that was the only option which our forefathers have, that whenever they have any problem, then they used to refer to the soothsayers, because that was the only option which they have to know anything or to do anything about their life. So he just gives them a kind of excuse that before the advent of science or before the discoveries of science which has made us knowledgeable, it was quite all right to have these superstitions, to have these blind beliefs. So this is it. Thank you.